And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey's Researchers Report. Got a great show planned for you tonight. I am Kerry Arnold. With me, as always, producer and co-host of the report, Miss Daniela Ayolo. How are you, Daniela?
I'm good, thank you.
Looking lovely as always. Our guest for this evening, he's an enthusiast for cryptozoology, the paranormal, lost civilizations, and all things unexplained. Has authored books such as People Are Seeing Something and Water Monsters South of the Border. Mr. Denver Michaels. Welcome, Mr. Michaels. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you on. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone in the chat, y'all keep it clean for us. Be civil with each other. And don't get timed out or booted out. We got the best moderators on YouTube, and we do appreciate all the help that they give us. I'm snowed in. I'm in West Texas. I've been working out here for 9 years. I'm relatively, when it comes to careers, relatively new to this, in relation to my age, and I've never seen it like this. It's foot deep out there and still coming down. So just want to put that out there. A little personal information on me.
Man, we've not had any snow hardly in Virginia this year.
Really? Is that unusual?
Yeah, I mean, we've usually had, where I live in the mountains, I mean, we've usually had several good snows by now, but we've only had a couple, and they've not really amounted to a whole lot.
Well, let's get right into this. Denver, I'm just gonna call you Denver.
Yeah.
This is a Bigfoot show, so I mean, I get kicked in the teeth if I don't, talk about Bigfoot a little bit. So I know you get into a lot of other things, and we are going to get into that stuff. But what's your take on this creature? Do you believe they exist?
Yeah, I memean, I absolutely believe they exist. I kind of teeter a little bit. I kind of go back and forth on whether it's a flesh and blood yet to be discovered animal, or if it's something more interdimensional, or I mean, I hate to. I know that the woo gets kind of a bad rap.
I'm beginning to really hate that term.
Yeah, I do too.
It is a thing. It's a belief, and when you hear certain people like Ron Moorhead explain it and talk about it, it kind of makes it make sense. The only problem I have with it is there's just not a lot of evidence for it. Not that I've seen anyway. And I mean, I'm a guy that turns over, a lot of rocks in this business.
Yeah.
Or this subject.
Well,
and that's the only problem I have with it, really.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I started out just 100%, thinking that it was, Bigfoot's, flesh and blood, undiscovered great ape. And, I mean, I've always left a little bit of room that, it might be something more supernatural in nature. And then, the more I get into it, I've kind of, allowed more room for that, I guess. And just simply because of, there's just so many, you just get so much weirdness with, and you can't really separate it out. I mean, when somebody, like I know a girl that told me about, a Bigfoot-like creature that she saw. And I mean, it wasn't even in a place that you would even think that, could support a creature like that. It's a kind of on the outskirts of a town, not really, not really someplace that you'd expect there to be enough habitat. But I mean, she swears what she saw, but had like glowing red eyes, and not
hear that a lot.
Not eye shine, like glowing independently, like bioluminescence. And when you get stuff like that, when there's one where it shouldn't really, you just shouldn't see. There's no history of it, and you don't even see bears in that area. And you couple that with the eyes and things like that. That just kind of makes me kind of allow more for that supernatural aspect to come into play.
Absolutely. You can't discount it because we just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, people see what they see. And I mean, I'm going to be the last person to tell somebody what they saw. Like I said, the only problem I had with it, before was the lack of evidence for it, and what I've experienced personally, in the beginning was nothing like that. Now I've had some strange and bizarre things happen since I've been in the woods, doing this since then. And it's kind of leaning me towards something going on. Whether it has anything to do with Bigfoot, whether it's a correlation or just a happy coincidence.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things out there, I think, that that Bigfoot get blamed for, that just aren't demons, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah.
But let's get into something that you've put out here. I want to look at one of these books here. It's Water Monsters South of the Border. So now obviously you're talking about Mexico, Yucatan, down there, places like that.
Yeah, South America, the Caribbean, Mexico. I wrote a book about, some of the water creatures that they have down in that part of the world. The first book that I wrote was called People Are Seeing Something, a survey of lake monsters in the United States and Canada. And it was more of a, follow-up to that to, kind of tackle if they have a lot of the same stuff that, that we have up in this part of the world, or if it's more different type of creatures. And what you find is things like you have in up here in North America, like the Ogopogo and Champ, and some of those more famous water monsters that are for kind of like the Loch Ness monster, that sort of serpentine,
Right.
long neck type creature. You don't really have as many of those reports down there until you get like into the Patagonia region. But what you have a lot of the giants, in the Amazon part. You get all these reports of living dinosaurs. You get giant anacondas and that sort of thing. So I kind of tackled some of those creatures in the book.
Yeah, you could absolutely consider a giant anaconda a monster. I think I would.
Yeah.
But you seem to cover a pretty broad swath of cryptozoology, paranormal, a lot of the unexplained things. What's your research like? What's your process for researching? Not just for writing your books, but like when you go out in the field.
Yeah, well, when I go out in the field, I mean it. Yeah, and it depends what you're, what you're after or whatever. But like what I'm really kind of into right now, is like big cats, black panthers, cougars, that sort of thing. And it's not as sexy as Bigfoot and all that, but it's one of those things that I've kind of got interested in here lately because well, for one, back in September, I think 2017, there was like a fake flyer going around where I live about and it had like Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries letterhead on it, and it was a fake flyer talking about cougar sightings in the area, and how to be careful and all that. And so the department, they came out and it was all over the newspapers that there are no cougars in Virginia, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, oh yeah. So I've been spending most of my free time that I get out in the woods out trying to find like physical signs where I can. Listen to to reports, go on reporting sites, and see where things have been taking place, and I try to visit as many of those kind of areas as I can.
Do people contact you? Like, do you get a lot of eyewitness reports?
Yeah, I do. I get a lot through my website and social media too. I mean, I get all kinds of people sliding in my DMs, telling me, "Oh, I saw this or I saw that." But and if it's somewhere that's reasonably close, I'll try to go and check it out as best I can. It's not always possible, working.
Oh no, no, you're talking to the guy that understands that. We travel all over, and it's been testing for sure.
Yeah.
So what's your website for people that might want to contact you?
It's denvermichaels.net. Now you can go on there, and I write a blog post or an article every week, and there's links to my books, and I've got a YouTube channel, and there's a link to that, and so on and so forth.
What do you think it is about these, just the presence of these big cats, that wildlife officials and people that work in the outdoor industry just refuse to admit to? What is it?
You know, I've thought about that, and I mean, in some ways, I mean, I can understand that. Say if somebody sends them a trail cam pic, I mean, that's got a little more credence, right? But they don't know that this person's not trying to pull their leg or this or that. But I think for the most part, and I can sympathize with them. I mean, they don't want to come out and say, "Oh yeah, there's mountain lions here," right? Because you got to go through all this. Then that opens up a can of worms. Okay, well, is it game species? Is it a non-game species? Well, there's not enough of them, obviously. So now we got to put these laws in place to protect them. And then, you're going to have this part of the population. I mean, where I live, when there's a bear sighting, everybody's, oh, watch your kids on the school bus.
Well, it might be a smart
You
thing.
know what I'm saying? Some people are going to panic and act
Want
stupid.
your kids anyway. That's kind of understandable, but at the same time, shouldn't it be a responsibility? I mean, we're talking about wildlife officials. These creatures, they're actually there. Shouldn't they be responsible and go through those motions and let people know, hey, this is a possibility, this is a danger? Because if they're actually there and they don't know it, I've always said this, they're just not very good at their job. And I think they do know, because they are good. These people have done this, for a long time. They know what they're doing. They know what's out there. And to me, it just kind of hits me the wrong way, when they deny. It's Bigfoot. Maybe I can understand a little bit different, since there's no evidence, no good proof anyway in their eyes, or in the public's eyes for it. But when you're talking about something like a cougar that could attack and eat you, don't you think they have a responsibility to actually do this?
Well, I mean, you make a good point there, and I'll give you an example, right? What you're talking about there. In not May, March of, I guess it was March of 2018. We'd had a pretty good snow, and I went, I was hiking in the national forest on this trail, and it's not, it's kind of out of the way, so it's not, not like really well traveled, but there are plenty of people that use it. And up on the top of the mountain, there's an overlook, and then there's a cleared out area that people camp in. You could put a couple tents there as a primitive campsite. And I found, I mean, a whole series of tracks, and there's no doubt that that they were mountain lion tracks. And that was kind of like what you said. I mean, they can deny it all they want, but right, right here's, 40, 50 tracks where it's been walking back and forth right through these campsites and stuff. So, you make a good point as far as that goes.
Yeah, they may not be common, but at least make the acknowledgement. Hey, this is possible. Keep an eye out. I don't think that's going to scare people out of the woods. I think most people are smart enough anyway to realize that it's a possibility anyway. Anywhere in this country, black panthers come up from the south, from south of the border, Mexico, places like that. The black leopard, they call it. Mountain lions are everywhere. I mean, not literally, but as far as the country goes, the lower 48, there are mountain lions. We have them in South Mississippi. They have the panthers in Florida. So I mean, these things are around, and it just, to me, it seems irresponsible. But we'll get past that before I hand it over to Daniela. We got one more question for you. When it comes to these lake monsters and river monsters, do you tend to get more eyewitness reports? You get a lot of picture evidence, and what do you think these creatures possibly could be?
Well, mostly, from what I've seen, the bulk of it is eyewitness reports. I mean, a lot of them, occur so quickly that, and that's one of the things that people always say is, oh, everybody's got a cell phone now with a camera on it, and that's true. But a lot of these, people are just seeing these humps in the water, maybe a neck and a head for a minute, and then it's kind of gone, and in a lot of the pictures you get, they're just, kind of inconclusive. It could be this, it could be that.
Sure.
I mean, for the most part, it seems like it's just like eyewitness accounts, and you got to understand. I mean, most of the people that see these, they're not like out there looking for them. They're caught off guard. They're surprised, and
Right.
I mean, I know how hard it is when I see like an animal that like a bear or something. I want to take a picture of it, and you're fumbling around for your phone, and
Sure.
by the time you get it in focus, you just get its rear end or something. So
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense.
criticize people for that.
I tried to do that just not too long ago. I was out here on a location, and 4 of the biggest mule deer I ever saw in my life were just walking right across the edge of my location. And I'm talking about, they had rocking chairs on their head, and it was 4 of them, and it was one after the other. And I'm looking around. I got to get my phone, and that's all I got was like a silhouette.
Yeah,
Like,
I've done that dozens of times.
and I think if I told people, "Hey, I saw 4 mule deer in New Mexico," they'd say, "Oh yeah, you did." So here's the picture. Sorry.
Well, let's talk about you're interested in lost civilizations, and it's pretty clear that there have been some sort of technology that we're not, what we don't have. What do you feel about that? Do you feel that there has been some, we'll call it alien input into these civilizations that have done things that we can't do now?
Well, I mean, I certainly think that that's possible. I mean, I don't rule it out, and a lot of it's kind of low hanging fruit these days to for people to make fun of some of the ancient astronaut theories and all that. But when you look at a lot of these megalithic structures and things, like I visited Peru several years ago and visit a lot of those sites, and I've never, and most ancient astronaut theorists don't even say that aliens made them, but that they might have helped with the technology. And I mean, I don't think that that's something to necessarily rule out, because when you go to some of these places and see that the work that they did, I mean, I remember at the Sacsayhuaman, a lot of people probably seen that on Ancient Aliens or read about it in some books. It's just this, giant promontory over Cusco with just these massive stones. And I was just looking at, the stones, they're so big and that's all one thing. But then on the edges of the stones, they just have like these perfect radius on them, like almost like, I've done machining work, and it almost looks like somebody took like a corner rounding end mill down one of those stones or something. It's just amazing at that. So I don't rule it out. I just say that I don't take a strong position one way or the other if it's extraterrestrial or what have you.
Yeah, but there've obviously been some sort of machinery that can, you see the stuff that's got the big scoop marks in them, and you think, what on earth can scoop through stone like that? We just don't have that technology now, do we?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like to cut a lot of that stuff now into precision, and then there's a lot of theories like I've read about like certain routes in the Amazon that some of these secrets have been passed that can almost like melt the stone almost to where it's like clay, and it could be fashioned. But then when you look at the size and the scope of these these projects, I mean, that you'd have to have like just like drums and drums full of that solution out there. So I don't know. It's just baffling, but it's really cool to think about.
Yeah. So I know you look back in history a lot. You do a lot of research that to sort of gain some insight into why some of these cryptids or where they're based from. I read on one of your blogs, there was something about Dogman. It wasn't called Dogman, but it's something beginning with D. I think it was the 1800s. Dwani, is it?
Dwayyo.
Yeah. What is that?
Okay, well, the Dwayyo, it's kind of like it's not too far from where I live, probably about an hour and a half away, and like during the 1960s, mid 1960s, but I mean, I think there's reports before that, maybe like back into the 40s, but like in the Frederick County, Maryland area, there were just all these reports of like a 6 foot tall, black dog that walks upright, and it wasn't really as much like as a lot of the dog man reports you hear about these days, that have the amber eyes and, like real muscular bodies and stuff. It more just sounded like a big dog that walks, and it had like a big bushy tail. Like an artist did a rendition of it, and that's exactly what it looks like. Just a dog standing up. But for a while, like in 1965, I think, there's just all these reports of this creature, and it allegedly attacked a man, but a lot of people think that, and that was probably what really got it started in the local newspapers, was a guy called in, saying that one of these things had attacked him, and the paper, they called the police, and the police went out to track it down, but the address didn't exist, and they couldn't find, that the guy even existed. So it's probably a hoax that kind of got it all started. But I mean, it was a real rash of sightings there for a long time, and then there were a few more in the 70s, but I've not heard any more about that creature per se. But nowadays you have all these dogman reports everywhere, and I kind of look at that almost as a precursor to a lot of what you have going on here lately.
What did they call the creature again?
Dwayyo, DWAYYO, Dwayyo. Yeah, and it's supposed to be these kids from, and the way I guess it got its name, these kids from the University of Maryland, they sent some stuff into the newspaper, saying it was a cross between a Dway and a Yo, and supposedly these two creatures interbreeded. More than likely it was all a hoax, but there were still a lot of sightings and stuff. So you don't know where to separate fact from fiction with a lot of that old stuff.
I think when it comes to multiple sightings of something and a hoax, then people actually seeing something. It's just somebody messing with a bunch of people, which to me is if you're gonna dress up in a suit or something, especially around that area, I don't know, maybe not so much now, since they're taking y'all's guns away. But dangerous thing to do. It's a dangerous thing to do in South Mississippi. You dress up in a gorilla suit and go out in the woods, and you're not ever gonna come home again.
Yeah, that don't seem too smart.
Reality. real quick, I just want to let everybody know we will take questions for Denver Michaels about the last 15-20 minutes of the show. So get those ready. Make sure you have those all in caps for us, please, so we can pick them out easily.
So out of all the cryptids, what takes your interest the most?
Well, the thing that always interested me the most was lake monsters, and the reason for that is because it just seems like out of all the cryptids, all the creatures out there, that could be the most likely to actually exist, in my opinion. And not to take anything away from Bigfoot or other creatures out there, but there's just so much water, with our oceans and our lakes. There's just so much water that these things could, potentially be in. And and the thing with them too, there's there's not so much of that what we were talking about earlier, the supernatural or woo aspect with them. I mean, some people do think that, your lake monsters and sea serpents are ghosts or, some kind of manifestations. But for the most part, it's either people are seeing what they claim they're seeing, or they're being fooled by waves and debris floating around and that sort of thing. So that always just it always interested me, your lake monsters, your sea serpents, and I always just kind of wondered and felt like maybe something maybe something had prehistoric had survived into our present day. I mean, and that's all of your reports, they sound like plesiosaurs or things like that, and maybe it's possible, who knows.
Well, to me, and I'm just chime in for a second. I think when you get right down to it, if no one had ever had any experience with any of these things, and then was maybe an outdoor enthusiast or whatever, I can see why someone would lean more toward the sea creature, because it's so much harder to investigate the water. If you're not scuba diving, and even then visibility is extremely limited, even in the ocean in some places. So that's understandable that if you haven't had a Bigfoot experience, it's hard for people to grasp a hold of. It really is. I'm not saying that you don't. Obviously, you believe they exist. We know they exist, but you have to have that experience to really have that. So it's understandable that more people would lean toward the river monster, sea creatures. Not saying it's a monster or something supernatural, but just something that we just haven't, that knows to stay away from us. It's well enough to stay away.
We had Ronald Murphy on, didn't we, and asked him which he thought was the most plausible, and he said probably anything that's in the sea.
Yeah.
It's kind of I had a really good question. I was going to say, have you ever had a paranormal experience yourself?
Just I think I saw a UFO one time. I mean, I don't know if it's paranormal or what, but I've had that, and when visiting some haunted places, I've had some of those weird kind of experiences like that. And I know for a fact that I don't know for a fact, that sounds stupid, but that I saw a ghost like crossing the road one time. But as far as like a Bigfoot encounter or things like that, I haven't had any anything like that. Nothing that was earth shattering, life changing kind of thing. I've always, for whatever reason, from an early age, I've just always been kind of predisposition to believe in this stuff. I've had an interest in paranormal things and cryptids. I mean I can remember since middle school or even before that, and I can't point to anything that I saw that would make me lean that way, but I've just always had an open mind for it all.
I used to think it was unusual for people to do anything of merit in any one of these subjects, in any of the fringe subjects, without having, a real experience. That, most people that had any interest in it at all was just that. It was an interest. They looked into it a little bit. They watched shows like this or whatever they can find on, the Discovery Channel, Monster Quest. It's just, but, I'm beginning to find out that there's a lot of people out there that do this and investigate and write books and go searching that have never had an experience. And I just wonder, what is it that makes you, what is it that draws you to that? I mean, aside from a paranormal experience, have you had anything happen to you while you've been in the field doing this?
Well, just like what I've had is just, kind of some of the things I've talked about. It's just mostly, when in like investigating hauntings and things. And of course that's kind of inconclusive, but no, I've just always, excuse me. I've just always just had a real keen interest in this and in people's experiences. I think that we don't know 10% what we think we know about the world around us. You know, I've always been interested in, like the multiverses, if there's multiverses and if that's interacting with our world in some way, like when we think we're hearing a ghost or something like that, is that really just like, me and you talking, in some other universe or something?
Hey, I get it.
I've just always this stuff just always fascinated me, and I really don't know why. I might just be kind of weird like that. I don't know. I've had arguments with with my dad over over stuff like that. It's like some of my family. If it ain't right there in the Bible in black and white, then you don't need to know about it. Kind of. But I've always took a different path, I guess.
All the most interesting people are weird about something. If you're not weird about anything and you're just straight laced old fuddy duddy guy, nobody's listening to you. Not these days, anyway.
I could remember back. I don't know. I'm dating myself here, but when that back in the 90s, when that alien autopsy special came out on Fox, and me and one of my buddies was talking about it, and of course, back then I'm like, oh man, I can't believe this great evidence. Of course, I was younger then, but
Sure.
I remember my dad overheard me and my buddy talking. He's like, you believe that stuff? And I'm like, well, I don't know, Dad. I just think there could be life out there beyond us. And he's like, ah. He just kind of walked off in disgust, But,
my dad. Sounds exactly like him. I really don't know what he would have thought about me telling him that, because he was in the woods his entire life, about if I ever told him that I saw a Sasquatch. I never really thought about that. What would he say? I think he would probably, I don't know.
Well, and that's one of those things. I mean, I used to, I don't really hunt that much anymore, but I mean, that's all I did in my teens and 20s and stuff. And, I never really saw anything like that, but, a lot of your avid hunters, they have these experiences, and they have, these Bigfoot sightings. And, I've heard of a bow hunter, that had a dog man sighting while he was up in his tree stand. And, but then, you talk to people that have hunted for, 50 years, never, they think you're on drugs if you told them a dog man, and but some people just have these experiences, and I'm fascinated by it.
Well, you're absolutely right. My brother-in-laws, I get it from them all the time because they've hunted their whole lives. They've never seen or experienced anything like that. But, you're also not really looking for it.
Yeah.
It's hard to find something that you're not looking for, when your focus is somewhere else. And hunters are very focused people.
Mm-hmm.
But they're normally focused on one thing. If they're deer hunting, then they're focused on deer. And you have to stop and think and look back at all the things that ever happened. A strange knock, a weird yell, scream that you just played off as being something else.
Yeah.
This is what we do here with the Bigfoot subject. We try to push awareness, just be aware. You don't have to believe, just consider it as a possibility. That way, when you are out there and you hear that strange, weird thing, and you hear that Barry Bonds knock on the tree 5 times, that it's a possibility, just be open to it. That's what we try to tell people, because they can step out on you. It happens.
Yeah.
Someone made a good point before when we were talking about ghosts. What if we are the ghosts?
That's a little deep. I think that's a little bit too deep for me. Well, if we're the ghosts, then what are the other things? Those are the real people, and we're the shadows. True.
I'll just put this up because it's here now. What do you think is the most likely the animal that is misidentified as a lake monster?
Most likely misidentified animal. I mean, I guess it would depend on, on where you're at. I mean, sturgeon is always a you know, that's everybody's number one go-to, but you know, it makes a lot of sense, you know,
Get
big they are. Another one I think makes sense is alligator gar, because they're so big, you know, in lakes that might have those, or sometimes, you know, you might get one of those in a lake that they are not really supposed to be in, or have not, you know, that you don't have a record of them being in, and yeah, that could cause that. You know, there's I've thought too, you know, uh, up in Alaska, there's been these sightings of Greenland sharks that have came inland, and I saw a video on YouTube of one of those that was it was either sick or dying, but it was, you know, kind of thrashing around, and I mean, it looked just like a lot of your lake monster eyewitness, you know, what they described. So, I mean, those are some potential things.
Yeah.
Eels. I think I heard eels.
Yeah, eels. I mean, well, that's what they're, you know, what they're saying. You know, they did that study that they think the Loch Ness monster, you know, might be as an eel, and there's, you know, they're saying a large eel. I mean, even a big one, I guess, probably wouldn't even push 10 feet, but you know, people are, you know, kind of miscalculating the size or something, and you know, that could definitely be too.
Yeah, when you're in that moment, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a good question, Andy. A really good one. Bigfoot, Michigan Rob.
You know, I think megalodon exists today. Yeah, and I get teased a little bit for this, but yeah, I kind of am a believer that it does exist, because you know, especially like out in the Gulf of California, that's what they call it, the black demon, you know, and there's just a lot of reports of people you know, seeing these things, and I mean, I think the depths there get to almost 10,000 feet. And I mean, to me, that's a lot of, you know, that's a lot of room for something to go undetected. And, you know, and if there's just a very small population of them, why not? I don't know.
It's a vast ocean.
Yeah. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, we know more about the moon, you know, than we do the ocean.
Absolutely. It's just so hard to investigate, like we were saying before. And I'm down with the whole megalodon thing. I mean, just knowing what is actually there is what keeps me out of the water. You know, Linda and I will go, if we go to the beach somewhere, she's going in. She don't care. I'm standing there watching.
I'll go out a little ways till I feel something bump against my leg, and then I'm
yeah, well, some guy said 90% of all shark attacks happen in 3 feet of water.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's where the people are. Of course, that's why. Nobody out there, you know, swimming to Ireland. Oh, there's a shark. Okay.
What do you feel about giants, and have they been covered up? Is it a kind of, are they trying to delete the history of the giants?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that I've always been interested in too, is giants. And
there's an answer for the pyramids.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that could be a and you know, they're tied to a lot of those megalithic structures that we're talking about earlier, and you know, a lot of the legends and lore. Have they been covered up? I mean, I don't know that, you know, that there's like this ongoing conspiracy to cover them up, but what I do believe is that that the Smithsonian, because if you look at and anybody can go online and they can go to the Smithsonian's own website, download their old reports to the Bureau of Ethnology, especially like the 5th and the 12th annual reports. And there's just all these instances of these, you know, massive skulls and bones that the Smithsonian, that their agents collected and shipped to the Smithsonian. And you know, the Smithsonian claims that they do not have these, you know, these bones. And so, and you know, I don't doubt that. I don't think that there's this, you know, warehouse like in Indiana Jones that's, you know, got all this hidden stuff necessarily, but I do think that they probably at some point, probably in the 30s or 40s, just probably dumped them in the Potomac or the Chesapeake or something, just because it was too much liability, I guess, for them to have to really address it. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, the people there now, I don't think are engaging in a conspiracy, but yes, I do believe that at some point they disposed of evidence.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's this one thing that to me is a major factor, and that's time. We've this earth has been around for such a long time, and we look at our own history. What really lasts, like for previous civilizations? We go back as far as the Sumerians as a reach. You don't really hear a whole lot about them. It's usually the Greeks and the Egyptians, is where, real civilization started. But it only takes 1,000 years to get rid of anything. Even plastic is not going to stick around that long.
Mm-hmm.
So look at what we did in 60 years. We went from just getting off the ground, Kitty Hawk, to going to the moon in 60 years. I mean, that's just a blink of an eye as far as time goes. So how do we know there haven't been many civilizations with technologies, that stuff we just haven't figured out yet? And what's left over are all of these things that do last, like stone, and some metal, so that's just, to me, that's a factor. Is what if there were these civilizations that, that lived before, that had the flying cars and all that, and then something happened, everybody died, nobody around to write it down, tell the story, anything that was left, hey, the earth took care of it. So that's how I kind of look at some of these things. When they're dating rocks, how can you date a rocks? You can't carbon date a rock. Carbon is silicate. It's going to take you back. Even if you could date it, it's going to take you back to the origin of the rock, not when it was made. So some of these things, I think it's all best guess, and they put it out there as facts. That's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there's a whole lot more to our history than anybody, knows or is willing to admit. And, and just a lot of that, kind of ties into, a lot of this other stuff that we've been talking about tonight. And, to me, it all just kind of interrelates,
Sure. Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on the Baraka skulls?
Last of the Wilds.
The Baraka skulls, I haven't studied that as a whole lot. I mean, so I don't have a strong opinion on it. I mean, that part of me that wants to believe, is like, it's got to be an alien hybrid, but who knows? I can't. I wouldn't rule something like that out, but I haven't looked into it enough to, give you a real informed opinion on it.
I just had to show that. That's pretty good, Adam.
Your data rock, but it may not. that's funny, actually.
That is funny.
Pretty good.
That's why I had to put it up.
I put in the title that because of your book. You mentioned Roswell. What have you studied about that? Or
well, in that book, I kind of chronicled a trip that I took out there, and sort of that whole area about like however big a 2-hour radius around there. I visited several years ago and went to some of the sites like Carlsbad Caverns, the Waco tanks in El Paso. Went to at Three Rivers petroglyph site in Tularosa, and just a lot of those places. But the high point of the trip was going to Roswell. Yeah, just because I'm just kind of like always been into this stuff, and had done a lot of traveling in the States anyway, and just kind of sitting around one day is like, I still haven't been to Roswell. What's wrong with me? So I planned a trip out there, and me and my son when he was 18, we went out there and did all the things there is to do in town and all that, and visited quite a lot of other sites around there.
There is something strange about New Mexico. I don't want to say just Roswell, but I'm in West Texas. I've got a lot of work that happens in New Mexico, southeastern New Mexico, Jal, Eunice. I was in Hobbs. This was 2015 October, and I'm sitting on a set of wells at night, and it's kind of warm in October, and I look, and about 1,000 yards out, I see an orange light. It's probably about the size of a basketball. And I thought somebody was out there with a flashlight or a lantern, because it would kind of dim a little bit and get bright. And it was moving really slow across. There's no trees out there. You can see for, the horizon's 12, 13 miles away. You can see all the way that far. And I was wondering what this could be, because it was a strange color, and then it just kind of flickers out. Okay. Well, not 2 minutes later, I see it again, a half a mile down. Like, this was in the east, now it's in the north, 2-3 feet off the ground. Here it is again, just comes on. And I'm, nobody gonna run that far in that short amount of time. So it's kind of tripping me out a little bit, exactly what this is. And then it goes out. I don't see it anymore. And in about maybe 20, 30 minutes, I hear a hum. It's this buzz. And it's getting closer, it's getting louder. And I mean, my location is lit up, and it's close enough now where I'm looking up, and I see a plane, but it's small. It's probably it's like a drone, but it sounded like it had a propeller. Square wings, 12, like a Cessna, only a lot smaller, and just a weird shape, and it's all one color, no lights on it, which is an FAA violation right there. But some kind of drone or plane, and it was loud, and it flew 30 feet right over me. It went right over me. Of course, I'm fumbling for my phone trying to get it, and of course it's too late. But I always thought that was strange. And if there was some kind of correlation, that if the military or whoever, one of the alphabet organizations, is out there, with these strange lights, it's the only time I'd ever seen them. But it's also, I became a senior since then, so I only worked during the daytime, so I didn't work at night anymore. But you go out to New Mexico in the desert at night and just be there, and something strange is going to happen. You're going to see some weird lights in the sky. You're going to see, people call them satellites, but some of these things are like bigger than satellites would be, like really big stars, bright lights just going over with nothing blinking on them. There's weird stuff happens in New Mexico for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's sparsely populated. That could be it. I don't know. The West Texas is not that bad because there's a lot of people around here working in the oil field. But it's just strange. Just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, definitely.
The whole time.
Adam B again is asking, any info mysteries of the Grand Canyon? And I wonder if he means about the cave that was found, the mummies and the artifacts.
Yeah, that's about all that I'm familiar with. Probably the same things you're talking about. Supposedly, there's been Egyptian, in the early 1900s, Egyptian artifacts, found in the Grand Canyon. And, the thing is now is like nobody can get to them all, where those caves were is restricted. And, but supposedly there's like these old newspaper articles, maybe as late as the 1920s. I'm trying to remember, but I know early 1900s, that there might be a supposed like city almost inside of the Grand Canyon with these Egyptian artifacts and things like that. But I don't know a whole lot more than that about them.
Yeah. There's a few questions here. I'll just have to scroll back a little bit. What about blue holes and islands? Possible giant Octopus.
Yeah, I wrote a little bit about that in my my book, Water Monsters South of the Border. In the Caribbean, there's these blue holes, and they're just they're just like these sinkholes, like in the ocean, and I mean they go like 200 feet deep, or maybe deeper than that. If you look at an aerial view, you got that real kind of greenish blue water, and then all of a sudden you got these just circular, just real dark blue water. And supposedly, out of these blue holes, a creature called the Luska, comes out, and it's supposedly half shark, half octopus, at least according to the lore, and up to 200 feet long, in some accounts, and it supposedly attacks boats and pulls them under, and has snatched swimmers, off the shores and things like that. And there's a lot of legend behind it, and it may just be a way of explaining lost ships and lost people that go missing and things like that. But it's pretty fascinating.
I got another one. Sorry, they're just jumping up. Do you believe in underground bases existing in Lake Superior that have alien civilization or any civilization?
Bigfoot, Michigan, Rob.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily believe in them. I mean, there's a lot of stories behind a lot of that stuff. And I mean, I suppose if there are aliens, if there is an alien presence on the earth, I mean, to me, it would be underground, and that would explain, a lot of your, legends, and, like in occult literature, a lot of your, underground, civilizations and things like that. And in some of your stories from, supposedly there's these underground cities under the Gobi Desert, and places like that, and in the Himalayas. So that would explain those, but I don't know if I believe it or not.
I have to think that it's really arrogant to believe that an extremely intelligent beings traveling all this distance from another planet would want to have anything to do with us at all.
I don't want to have nothing to do with it.
I'm telling you, we are not as advanced. I'd say mentally, emotionally, and socially as we all think we are. It's it's a shame, really. But why would they want to have anything to do with us? Why would they want to help us? It doesn't make any sense. It's like walking by an ant bed and trying to help them.
Yeah.
I look at it. But hey, I just want to say this real quick. Make sure you go and subscribe to Daniela's new channel. That's called Hidden Existence. She's got shows every Friday right now, Daniela?
Yeah, every Friday.
On Friday, she's got a couple shows out that you guys really need to go see. Very good. It's called Hidden Existence. Make sure you go check that out. Also, Mark and I just recorded our next 2 installments of Mark and Kerry A to Z. Those going to be up probably either tomorrow or the next day. Mark's got to edit them. Going to put those up. You'll find a link in the description for our Patreon. It's called Mark and Kerry A to Z, and we discuss everything under the sun, mostly cryptid and fringe subjects. But make sure you go and check out Denver Michaels. He's got a couple of books. People are seeing something. And Water Monsters South of the Border. What's your new book again?
El Paso to Las Cruces via Roswell.
Yeah, and I found it.
Yeah,
El Paso to Las Cruces via Roswell. Yeah. Very, very interesting stuff. I just want to put that out there. This Saturday, 7:00 p.m. Central, on the Researchers Report, we're going to have possibly Ritwell's, Mr. Woodbooker Farm, and we're going to get some of the guys from the expedition on here. So I don't know who has time or who can come on just yet, but I'm going to ask some guys to come on. We're going to put out some information about our upcoming expedition. It's just next month, y'all. It's here. and we're the planning is in order. I gotta say, the drone thermal camera fell through. Could not get the guy to return my calls. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he sold the thing. I don't know, but all is not lost. We are purchasing the Mavic Pro with the thermal camera. It's about $5,000, a couple $1,000 more than we planned on spending, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to get that Mavic Pro. So we are going to have a thermal drone, just not going to have the one that we planned on having. So things are working out. We're making them work out. We have all the equipment. I'm still ordering food, and we're getting close to doing some planning. So I just want to let everybody know the expedition's still on. It's happening. There's no turning back now, and it's just next month. Bite my nail. So
it'll fly in no time now. This next 7 weeks, however long it's going to take.
I gotta find time to go home at some point before then. I got so much stuff.
Get a documentary out. No, not going to get a documentary out before.
Oh no way are we getting another episode out before then. But no. What I'll probably do is get one during, because that's strictly for YouTube. You know, the expedition is going to be on Patreon, and I still haven't decided if it's going to be $1 an episode or just a flat $5 to watch the whole 7 episodes. So I don't know. We'll see what's going to happen with that. But we do. No. Anybody that's helped us do it is not going to have to pay a dime. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Someone did mention that the other week, actually, and I thought I was going to mention it to you, but no. Yeah, it'll all be clear by the time we get to.
Yeah, we're still a good ways out. I mean, long enough. It's here, but it's not. There's a foot of snow on the ground out there. So
yeah, okay.
Now, just look outside.
I don't know if you know about this, Denver, but I've always wondered what is at the bottom of that hole. Have you any idea?
Mel's Hole in Washington State.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the bottomless pit, right?
Yeah.
I've not been out there yet. That's on my list. That's Washington State is actually one of the few remaining states that I need to that I haven't visited, unfortunately. So
Bigfoot
under there.
I'm going to go and talk now about cemeteries. What do you think is going on at the cemeteries? Why are they haunted places?
I mean, I don't know. I've always wondered that myself because, I mean, if you think about it, they shouldn't really be haunted, right? Because, I mean,
just the body, isn't it? That there,
yeah, it's just the body there. I mean, it's like, you know, these hauntings, they're usually like in the house where the person died, or, you know, if a person, you jumped off a bridge, you know, the vicinity around that bridge will be haunted, or somebody got, you know, hit by a car or a car accident. You know, sometimes people will see, you know, an apparition along the road, things like that. So I'm not really sure, you know, why his cemeteries are haunted, but I mean, but you do get a pretty good range of paranormal activity in them. So it's hard to say. I mean, is that something? I've always wondered if that's something that, you know, like maybe we bring into it, you know, if we are, you know, projecting that, you know, ourselves and making that happen. I really that's the only explanation that I can really come up with, because, you know, they're just, those are just decomposing bodies. Their spirits are wherever they died. You know, if you follow that whole, you know, line of logic, you know.
This is a good point, though. People live residual sorrow at gravesides.
Well, that's a good point.
Negative energy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, energy is energy, and you know, it's always around. So, yeah.
Still, Steve and Griff that said that they never found anything good in the cemetery. It's always something bad. Oh, your dog's alive. Good.
Someone says the rent's cheap.
Is it? I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know how much. I have to ask Linda what we paid for ours.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I never thought of that. This is not everything, but a lot of things.
Treva.
It's Treva. Sorry, Treva.
It's Treva. She made sure and corrected me that one day.
So what's your next thing then? What are you doing next?
Well, I've got a book I'm working on right now. It's called Strange Tales from Virginia's Mountains, and it's going to be out this fall. I don't have a date yet, so I'll be putting that out later. And I actually have a publisher. It's going to be History Press. It's publishing that, so that'll probably be out in September, October, around then. And it's just going to cover some, like the title says, strange things from the western part of Virginia. You'll have some cryptid stuff in there. You'll have some. I've got some cool tales about giant discoveries in Virginia, and a couple other cool things. I cover a ghost town in the mountains, and some of the dark parts of Shenandoah National Park, that sort of thing.
Sounds good.
It does. Well, Denver, we've come to the end of our hour. It's been a pleasure having you on, and you just feel free to come back anytime when you get your next book out. Make sure you come back and holler at us. Make sure you guys check out the link. We'll have the links in the description for Denver's books, so you can go and purchase those if you'd like. Make sure you go and subscribe to Hidden Existence. Daniela's got a couple of really cool shows on there. Thank you, Denver Michaels, for coming on here with us tonight. Next Saturday, 7:00 p.m. Central, we're going to have Woodburger Farm and some of the guys from the expedition, so don't miss that. We'll see you then. Have a good night, y'all.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Denver.